the sheer scale of the eruption that created it. But Crater Lake holds secrets far deeper than its stunning blue hue. Imagine a lake so pure, so pristine, that it acts as a living memory. A body of water that somehow remembers the cataclysmic event that gave birth to it. It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel, doesn't it? But in the heart of Oregon lies Crater Lake, a place where the water itself seems to whisper tales of a violent past. We're not talking about ghosts or supernatural phenomena, though the Native American legends surrounding the lake certainly hint at a powerful spiritual presence. What we're talking about is something far more tangible, something rooted in the very science of how Crater Lake was formed and how it continues to exist today. Think about it. Most lakes are fed by rivers and streams, constantly bringing in new water and carrying away the old. This constant flow means that the water is always changing, always being diluted. But Crater Lake is different. It's primarily fed by snow and rain, and it loses water only to evaporation and seepage. This creates a closed system, a self-contained world where the water stays remarkably consistent. And within that consistent water lie layers of information, subtle clues about the lake's dramatic history. These clues aren't always obvious. They require careful scientific investigation, a deep understanding of geology, hydrology, and even a bit of detective work. But the more we learn about Crater Lake, the more we realize that it's not just a beautiful landmark. It's a living archive, a testament to the power of nature and the secrets that water can hold. So, what exactly does Crater Lake remember? How can water possibly hold on to information about an event that happened thousands of years ago? And what can this memory tell us about the future of our planet? That's what we're going to explore in this video. We'll dive deep into the science behind Crater Lake, uncovering the geological processes that shaped it, the unique properties of its water, and the surprising ways in which it continues to reflect its catastrophic origins. Get ready to journey to one of the most stunning and scientifically fascinating places on Earth, a place where the water truly does seem to remember the catastrophe. The sheer scale of the caldera is breathtaking. Imagine standing on the rim, looking down at a lake so blue, so impossibly vibrant it feels like you're staring into another world. The cliffs plunge almost vertically, a testament to the violence that created this space. But it's not just the visual impact, it's the silence. A deep, profound silence that amplifies a sense of isolation and timelessness. It's humbling. Dr. Aris Thorne, a limnologist who's dedicated much of his life to studying Crater Lake, said to me as we stood on the edge of the caldera. The wind whipped around us, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. You can feel the weight of history here. The water, it holds it all. He wasn't speaking metaphorically, not entirely. Aris explained that the water's unique purity and stratification play a crucial role in preserving information about the lake's past. Crater Lake is fed almost entirely by snow and rain, making it one of the purest large bodies of water in the world. This lack of sediment and organic matter means that particles and chemicals that enter the lake remain suspended for longer periods, essentially creating a historical record within the water column. Think of it like layers of a cake, Harris continued, gesturing towards the lake. The deeper you go, the older the layers, and each layer contains clues about the conditions that existed at the time it was formed. One of the key areas of research focuses on the lake's meromictic nature. This means that the layers of water don't mix easily, creating distinct zones with different chemical compositions and temperatures. The deep, cold layer at the bottom, the monolimnion, is particularly fascinating. It's a stagnant zone that hasn't mixed with the upper layers for thousands of years, effectively acting as a time capsule. We can analyze the sediment in the monolimnion and find traces of volcanic ash, pollen, and even microscopic organisms that lived in the lake shortly after the eruption, Aris explained. This gives us a detailed picture of the environmental conditions that followed the catastrophe. The eruption of Mount Mazama wasn't just a single event. It was a series of cataclysmic explosions that lasted for days. Pyroclastic flows, superheated mixtures of gas and volcanic debris, raced down the mountain slopes, incinerating everything in their path. Ash plumes soared miles into the atmosphere, darkening the sky and blanketing the surrounding landscape. Imagine the impact on the ecosystem, Aris said, his voice tinged with awe and sadness. Everything, within a vast radius, was wiped out. The lake itself would have been a cauldron of boiling water and volcanic gases. But life, as it always does, eventually found a way to return. Over time, the caldera filled with water, and the ecosystem began to rebuild itself. But the scars of the eruption remain, not just in the landscape, but also within the lake's water. It's a remarkable testament to resilience, isn't it? Maya murmured, tracing the rim of her binoculars as she scanned the distant shore. That something so violently destroyed could become something so profoundly beautiful. Aris nodded, his gaze fixed on the impossibly blue surface. And the water. It holds the memory, in a way. Not in a literal, sentient sense, of course, he added quickly, anticipating Maya's playful skepticism. But in its unique chemical and biological composition. The ash and minerals that settled after the eruption, the way the ecosystem re-established itself, it's all imprinted in the water's very being. He pulled out a small vial of water he'd collected earlier, holding it up to the sunlight. Look at this. The clarity is astounding. Some of the purest water on Earth. But it's not just pure H2O. It's a complex solution, a living archive of the past. Maya leaned closer, peering at the vial. So, what kind of secrets does it hold? Aris chuckled. That's what we're trying to unravel. We've been studying the lake's chemistry, its microbial life, the distribution of minerals in the water column. Each element tells a story. He explained how the initial eruption would have sterilized the lake, killing off any pre-existing organisms. Then, as the caldera cooled and filled with rainwater and snowmelt, pioneer species, hardy bacteria and algae, began to colonize the barren environment. These organisms, adapted to the harsh conditions, played a crucial role in shaping the lake's ecosystem. Think about it, Aris continued. The water initially was extremely acidic, filled with dissolved metals leached from the volcanic rock. Only the toughest organisms could survive, and as they thrived, they gradually altered the water's chemistry, creating conditions for other species to follow. Maya considered this. So the water itself became a kind of incubator, fostering the development of a unique ecosystem. Exactly, Harris exclaimed, a spark of excitement in his eyes. And the evidence is right here, in the water's molecular structure. We can analyze the isotopes of oxygen and hydrogen to determine the sources of the water. Rainwater, snowmelt, even geothermal springs. We can trace the flow of nutrients through the food web by studying the ratios of carbon and nitrogen isotopes in different organisms. He pointed towards a group of researchers meticulously collecting water samples from a small inflatable boat. They're looking for subtle variations in these isotopic signatures. Variations that can tell us about the lake's past, about the processes that shaped its unique chemistry. So, it's like reading the lake's autobiography, written in the language of isotopes? I asked, trying to wrap my head around the complexity of it all. Aris chuckled. In a way, yes, but it's more than just a historical record. It's a blueprint of the lake's current state and a predictor of its future. By understanding how the lake has responded to past disturbances, volcanic activity, climate change, even human impact, we can better manage it for generations to come. He paused, his gaze drifting towards Wizard Island, a volcanic cinder cone that rises dramatically from the lake's surface. And Crater Lake has faced some pretty significant disturbances in its time. The sun was beginning to dip below the rim of the caldera, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The air grew cooler, and a gentle breeze rustled through the pine trees that clung to the crater walls. Tell me more about these disturbances, I urged, eager to hear the next chapter of the lake's story. Aris leaned against the railing, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Well, the most obvious one is the eruption itself. The collapse of Mount Mazama wasn't a single event. It was a series of cataclysmic explosions and pyroclastic flows that reshaped the entire landscape. Imagine the sheer volume of ash and debris that rained down on the surrounding area. Imagine the shock waves that reverberated through the earth. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to visualize the scene. But the eruption wasn't just a destructive force, it was also a creative one. It carved out the basin that would eventually become Crater Lake. It deposited minerals and nutrients that would nourish the new ecosystem. It set the stage for a unique experiment in ecological recovery. So the lake is a testament to the resilience of nature? I suggested. Absolutely, Aris replied. But it's also a reminder of the fragility of ecosystems. Crater Lake is a closed system, meaning that it's relatively isolated from external influences. This makes it particularly vulnerable to changes in its environment. He pointed towards a small stream that trickled down the crater wall. For example, the amount of water that flows into the lake each year is dependent on snowmelt and rainfall. If climate change leads to less precipitation, the lake level could drop, which could have devastating consequences for the aquatic life. And what about human impact? I asked. How has that affected the lake? Aris sighed. That's a complicated question. For centuries, the Klamath tribes revered Crater Lake as a sacred place. They understood the importance of preserving its purity. But with the arrival of European settlers, things began to change. Logging, mining, tourism, all of these activities have had an impact on the lake and its surrounding watershed, he continued. Even something as seemingly innocuous as driving a car can contribute to pollution, as exhaust fumes can deposit nitrogen oxides into the atmosphere, which eventually end up in the lake. He paused, his expression thoughtful. The challenge is to find a balance between human needs and the preservation of this natural wonder. We need to learn from the past, understand the present, and plan for the future. And that's where your research comes in, I said, nodding in understanding. Exactly, Harris replied. By studying the lake's history, its chemistry, its ecology, we can develop strategies to protect it from future threats. We can ensure that Crater Lake remains a pristine and vibrant ecosystem for generations to come. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, we stood in silence, contemplating the vastness of the lake and the complexity of its story. I felt a growing sense of respect for this remarkable place and a renewed appreciation for the importance of scientific research in protecting our planet's natural treasures. The water held secrets, memories of a catastrophe, and a testament to the power of recovery, all waiting to be deciphered. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, painting the caldera rim in hues of golden rose. The air was thin and carried the scent of pine and volcanic rock. We met Dr. Arnson at the research station, a small, unassuming building perched near the edge of the caldera. Inside, instruments hummed quietly, and charts and maps adorned the walls, a testament to years of dedicated study. "Ready for a closer look?" Dr. Arneson asked, a twinkle in his eye. "We're going out on the lake today." My heart skipped a beat. I had imagined seeing Crater Lake from above, but the thought of actually being on its surface, surrounded by its immense depths, was both exhilarating and slightly unnerving. We descended the steep Cleetwood Cove Trail, a winding path that snaked down the caldera wall to the only accessible shoreline. The trail was surprisingly strenuous, a reminder of the sheer scale of the landscape. As we reached the water's edge, the true depth and clarity of the lake became even more apparent. The water was so clear that we could see rocks and submerged logs dozens of feet below the surface. A small research vessel awaited us, a sturdy boat equipped with sonar equipment, water sampling devices, and other scientific instruments. Dr. Arnson introduced us to his team, a young marine biologist named Sarah and a seasoned geologist named Ben. "All right, let's get to work," Dr. Arnson said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "Today, we're going to collect water samples from different depths and use sonar to map the lake floor. We're particularly interested in identifying any remaining hydrothermal vents." As the boat glided across the glassy surface, Sarah explained the process of collecting water samples. "We use a device called a Niskin bottle," she said, holding up a cylindrical container. "It's designed to collect water at a specific depth without contaminating it. We can then analyze the water for temperature, salinity, dissolved oxygen, and other parameters." Ben, the geologist, showed us the sonar equipment. "This device sends out sound waves that bounce off the lake floor," he explained. "By measuring the time it takes for the sound waves to return, we can create a detailed map of the underwater topography. It's like giving the lake a sonogram." As we moved further out into the lake, the caldera walls loomed around us, creating a sense of isolation and awe. The silence was broken only by the gentle hum of the boat's engine and the occasional call of a raven circling overhead. I couldn't help but imagine what it must have been like during the eruption of Mount Mazama, the cataclysmic event that had created this incredible landscape. Dr. Arneson pointed to Wizard Island, a volcanic cinder cone that rose majestically from the western end of the lake. "Wizard Island is a relatively young feature," he said. "It formed after the main eruption as the caldera began to fill with water. It's a reminder that even in this seemingly tranquil place, the forces of nature are still at work." He paused, looking out at the water, a thoughtful expression on his face. But it's the water itself, the unique properties of Crater Lake, that truly fascinates me. It's not just water, it's a recorder, a living archive of the past. I was intrigued. A recorder? What do you mean? I asked, genuinely curious. Dr. Arneson smiled. Think about it. Crater Lake is almost entirely fed by snow and rain. There are no streams or rivers flowing into it. This means that the water has an incredibly long residence time. On average, water molecules stay in the lake for hundreds of years. This allows the lake to accumulate and preserve information about the environment over long periods. He elaborated, explaining how the team was analyzing the lake's water for various isotopes, trace elements, and even microscopic organisms. The ratios of different isotopes of oxygen and hydrogen, for instance, could reveal information about past climate conditions, such as the temperature and precipitation patterns that existed when the water entered the lake. Similarly, the presence and abundance of certain algae species could indicate changes in nutrient levels and water quality over time. We're essentially reconstructing the lake's history, layer by layer, Dr. Arneson explained. It's like reading the rings of a tree, but instead of wood, we're using water as our medium. The idea of water as a living archive was captivating. I began to see Crater Lake in a completely new light. It wasn't just a beautiful lake, it was a time capsule holding secrets from millennia past. As we continued our boat tour, Dr. Arneson shared some of the team's preliminary findings. They had discovered evidence of several smaller volcanic events that had occurred after the main eruption. Events that had left subtle but detectable traces in the lake's water chemistry. They were also studying the impact of human activity on the lake, analyzing the levels of pollutants and other contaminants that had entered the water in recent decades. Crater Lake is a relatively pristine environment, Dr. Arneson said, but it's not immune to the effects of human activity. We need to understand how these impacts are affecting the lake's ecosystem so that we can protect it for future generations. We passed by Phantom Ship, a small island composed of jagged volcanic rock that resembled a ghostly sailing vessel. Dr. Arneson explained that the island was made up of dacite, a type of volcanic rock that was more resistant to erosion than the surrounding caldera walls. It was another reminder of the volcanic forces that had shaped this landscape. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lake, we returned to the research station. I felt a sense of awe and wonder at what I had learned. Crater Lake was more than just a lake. It was a living history book, a testament to the power of nature and a reminder of the importance of preserving our planet's fragile ecosystems. Back at the station, I had the opportunity to speak with some of the other researchers on Dr. Arneson's team. One of them, a young graduate student named Sarah, was particularly interested in the lake's microbial communities. She explained that the lake was home to a diverse range of microorganisms, some of which were unique to Crater Lake. These microbes play a crucial role in the lake's ecosystem, Sarah said. They help to cycle nutrients, break down organic matter, and even influence the lake's water chemistry. We're just beginning to understand the full extent of their impact. Sarah showed me some microscopic images of the microbes she was studying. They were incredibly diverse, ranging from bacteria and archaea to algae and protozoa. Each organism had its own unique shape and size, and each played a specific role in the lake's intricate web of life. We're also interested in how these microbial communities have changed over time, Sarah said. By analyzing the DNA of microbes preserved in the lake's sediments, we can reconstruct their evolutionary history and track how they have adapted to changing environmental conditions. The more I learned about Crater Lake, the more I realized how complex and interconnected its ecosystem was. It was a delicate balance of geological forces, climate patterns, and biological processes, all working together to create this unique and remarkable environment. And within that balance, the water itself held clues, whispers of the past waiting to be deciphered, a testament to the lake's incredible ability to remember the catastrophe that birthed it. It wasn't just the sediments that held secrets. The water chemistry itself, the very composition of the lake water, told a story. Dr. Nelson, a limnologist who had dedicated decades to studying Crater Lake, explained it to me during one of our research boat trips. "Think of it like this," she said, gesturing towards the impossibly blue expanse. "Every element, every molecule dissolved in this water has a source. It came from somewhere. And by tracing those sources, by understanding how they interact, we can piece together the lake's history." She pointed to a sophisticated array of sensors and probes dangling from the side of the boat. "We're constantly monitoring the water's temperature, pH, conductivity, oxygen levels. These are all vital signs. They tell us about the lake's health, its response to seasonal changes, even subtle shifts in the surrounding environment. But it was the dissolved minerals that truly fascinated me. They were like chemical fingerprints, remnants of the volcanic activity that had shaped the caldera. The high silica content, for instance, was a direct legacy of the rhyolitic lava that had once flowed here. And the presence of certain trace metals like iron and manganese hinted at the hydrothermal vents that still simmered deep beneath the surface. "These vents are crucial," Dr. Nelson explained. "They're like the lake's circulatory system. They release heat and chemicals from the Earth's interior, providing energy and nutrients to the organisms that live here. We lowered a remotely operated vehicle, ROV, into the depths, its camera sending back images of the lake floor. It was a desolate landscape of volcanic rock and sediment, but even there, life persisted. Microbial mats clung to the rocks near the vents, thriving in the warm, mineral-rich water. These extremophils, as they were called, were the descendants of the first organisms to colonize the lake after the eruption. They were living proof of the resilience of life, its ability to adapt and thrive even in the most extreme environments. Later that evening, back at the research station, I sat with Dr. Nelson, poring over data from the ROV dive. We were analyzing the chemical composition of the water near one of the hydrothermal vents. The data showed a distinct spike in sulfur compounds, indicating a high level of volcanic activity. "This is interesting," Dr. Nelson said, her brow furrowed. "It suggests that the vents may be more active than we previously thought." "Could that have any impact on the lake's overall ecosystem?" I asked. "Potentially," she replied. "Increased volcanic activity could alter the water chemistry, affecting the growth of algae and other organisms. It's a delicate balance, and even small changes can have significant consequences." The thought of the lake's delicate balance being disrupted was unsettling. It made me realize how vulnerable this seemingly pristine environment was to external forces. Climate change, pollution, even increased tourism could all have a detrimental impact. That's why it's so important to continue our research, Dr. Aris said, breaking the silence, to understand the lake's natural rhythms, its baseline state, so we can detect any deviations early on. She gestured towards the sophisticated equipment in the lab. We're using cutting-edge technology to analyze everything from the lake's temperature profile to the concentration of dissolved gases. We're even studying the microorganisms that thrive in these extreme conditions. As he spoke, I noticed a young researcher hunched over a microscope, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was meticulously examining a sample of sediment collected from the lake bed. "What are you looking for?" I asked, curious. He looked up, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Diatoms," he said, holding up a slide. They're microscopic algae with intricate silica shells. Their shells are like tiny time capsules, preserving information about the lake's past environmental conditions. He pointed to the delicate patterns on the diatoms. By analyzing the different species of diatoms present in the sediment layers, we can reconstruct a detailed history of the lake's water chemistry, temperature, and even its trophic state, the amount of nutrients available. It was fascinating to think that these tiny organisms could hold such valuable clues about the lake's past. It was like reading a book written in the language of nature. "So, what have you found so far?" I asked, eager to hear his insights. He hesitated for a moment, a pensive expression on his face. "Well, we've found evidence of significant shifts in the diatom community over time. Some of these shifts seem to correlate with known periods of volcanic activity. Others are more puzzling, and we're still trying to understand their causes." He paused, then added, "We've also found some unusual diatom species that we haven't been able to identify yet. They may be endemic to Crater Lake, unique to this environment." The thought that Crater Lake might harbor undiscovered species, organisms that exist nowhere else on Earth, was both exciting and humbling. It underscored the importance of protecting this unique ecosystem. Later that day, Dr. Aris took me to a remote part of the caldera rim, overlooking Wizard Island. The island, a volcanic cinder cone that rose dramatically from the lake's surface, seemed to beckon us closer. "Wizard Island is a living laboratory," she said, her voice filled with awe. "It's a testament to the resilience of life, to its ability to colonize even the most inhospitable environments." She explained that scientists were studying the plants and animals that had managed to establish themselves on the island, trying to understand how they had adapted to the harsh conditions. The island's isolation and its unique geological history made it a valuable site for studying ecological succession and evolutionary processes. As we stood there, gazing at the island, I couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder and respect for the power of nature. Crater Lake was more than just a beautiful lake. It was a living museum, a repository of knowledge, a place where the past and the present were inextricably linked. But even as I marveled at its beauty and resilience, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that had been growing within me. The lake's tranquility seemed almost deceptive, a fragile facade masking the immense forces that lay dormant beneath the surface. The thought of those forces being unleashed again, of the lake's delicate balance being disrupted, was deeply unsettling. That night, as I lay in my cabin, I couldn't sleep. The images of the lake, of the researchers working tirelessly to unlock its secrets, kept flashing through my mind. I felt a growing sense of responsibility, a conviction that I needed to do something to help protect this extraordinary place. I knew that I couldn't just stand by and watch as it faced the threats of climate change, pollution, and over-tourism. I had to use my voice, my platform, to raise awareness and inspire others to take action. Crater Lake was too precious to lose. It was a treasure that belonged not just to us, but to future generations. And we had a duty to safeguard it, to ensure that its waters continued to remember the past, and to inspire awe and wonder in all who beheld its beauty for generations to come. I started researching everything I could about Crater Lake, its geology, its ecology, its history. I devoured scientific papers, historical accounts, and the stories of the Klamath tribes, the original inhabitants of this land. The more I learned, the more deeply I understood the interconnectedness of everything in this ecosystem. The water, the forests, the wildlife, the people, all were bound together in a delicate balance, and that balance was now under threat. One of the most pressing concerns was the changing climate. Rising temperatures were causing the snowpack in the surrounding mountains to melt earlier and faster, reducing the amount of water flowing into the lake. This could lead to lower water levels, which would not only impact the lake's ecosystem, but also its iconic beauty. I remember talking to a park ranger, Sarah, a woman with weathered skin and eyes that reflected the deep blue of the lake. "It's happening faster than we thought," she said, shaking her head. "We're seeing changes in the plant life, the fish populations, even the clarity of the water. It's like the lake is telling us something, warning us." Pollution was another major issue. Although Crater Lake National Park was relatively isolated, it wasn't immune to the effects of human activity. Air pollution from distant cities could travel on the wind and deposit harmful chemicals into the lake. And runoff from nearby agricultural lands could carry fertilizers and pesticides, further polluting the water. Then there was the issue of over-tourism. As Crater Lake became more popular, the park was struggling to cope with the increasing number of visitors. More cars meant more air pollution. More people meant more trash and more pressure on the park's infrastructure. I saw firsthand the erosion of trails, the overflowing garbage cans, the crowds of people vying for the best viewpoints. It was clear that something had to be done to manage the impact of tourism. I decided to create a series of videos about Crater Lake, highlighting its beauty, its ecological importance, and the threats it faced. I spent weeks filming, capturing stunning footage of the lake's turquoise waters, its towering cliffs, and the diverse wildlife that called it home. I interviewed scientists, park rangers, and members of the Klamath tribes, giving them a platform to share their knowledge and their concerns. One of the most moving interviews was with an elder from the Klamath tribe, a man named Thomas. He spoke of the deep spiritual connection the Klamath people had with Crater Lake, which they called Giwas. "This lake is sacred to us," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "It is a place of healing, a place of power. We have a responsibility to protect it." He shared stories of how their ancestors had witnessed the cataclysmic eruption of Mount Mazama, the event that created Crater Lake. He told of the battles between the spirit beings, the clash of fire and water. He spoke of the lake as a living entity, a repository of memory and wisdom. "The water remembers," he said, his eyes gazing out at the shimmering surface. It remembers the fire, the destruction, but also the resilience, the rebirth. As he spoke, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of awe and respect for this place. It was more than just a beautiful lake. It was a sacred site, a living testament to the power of nature and the enduring spirit of the Klamath tribes. I began to understand why they felt such a deep connection to Crater Lake, why they considered it a part of their very being. It wasn't just about tradition or folklore. It was about a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. Dr. Aris, who'd been listening intently, nodded in agreement. The oral histories of the Klamath tribes offer invaluable insights into the lake's past, she said. They complement our scientific findings, providing a richer, more complete picture of Crater Lake's evolution. She explained how the tribe's traditional knowledge of the area's geology, ecology, and climate had been passed down through generations, offering clues that might otherwise be missed by modern science. For example, she continued, the tribes have long observed fluctuations in the lake's water level and temperature. These observations, recorded in their stories and ceremonies, can help us understand the lake's long-term cycles and predict future changes. She emphasized the importance of collaboration between scientists and indigenous communities, highlighting the potential for mutually beneficial knowledge sharing. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lake, we returned to the research station. The day had been filled with fascinating insights into the mysteries of Crater Lake, but I knew that we had only scratched the surface. The lake's depths held many more secrets, waiting to be uncovered. Back at the station, I reviewed the data collected by Dr. Aris's team. The isotopic analysis of the water samples revealed subtle variations, hinting at past climatic events and geological processes. The thermal sensors placed at various depths of the lake recorded a complex pattern of temperature gradients, indicating the presence of underwater springs and hydrothermal vents. All of this data, when pieced together, would help us understand how Crater Lake functions as a unique ecosystem. Later that evening, as we sat around a campfire, Dr. Aris shared a story about a recent discovery that had further deepened the mystery of Crater Lake. We found traces of a previously unknown microbial community living deep within the lake, she said. These microorganisms are unlike anything we've ever seen before. They seem to thrive in the extreme conditions of the lake's depths, utilizing chemical energy from the hydrothermal vents. She explained that these microorganisms could hold clues to the origins of life on Earth, as well as potential applications in biotechnology and medicine. Crater Lake is a living laboratory, she said, a place where we can study the fundamental processes of life and learn how organisms adapt to extreme environments. The discovery of this unique microbial community underscored the importance of protecting Crater Lake from pollution and other threats. Any disturbance to the lake's delicate ecosystem could have unforeseen consequences, potentially wiping out these valuable microorganisms before we even have a chance to study them. The next morning, we prepared for a dive into the lake. Dr. Aris and her team were planning to collect samples from the lake's bottom using a remotely operated vehicle, ROV. I was eager to witness this firsthand, to see the underwater world that lay hidden beneath the lake's surface. As we geared up, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. What secrets would we uncover in the depths of Crater Lake? What would we learn about the lake's past, its present, and its future? The possibilities seemed endless. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The sun, still low on the horizon, cast long shadows across the caldera rim. I watched as the ROV, a small, yellow submarine-like device, was carefully lowered over the edge of the cliff. Cables snaked down the steep slope, connecting the ROV to a control panel inside a nearby research vehicle. Dr. Aris, her face illuminated by the glow of the monitor, gave a final check to the equipment. "All right, team," she announced, her voice clear and focused. "Let's see what Crater Lake has to show us today." The ROV slowly descended into the water, disappearing from view. We gathered around the monitor, watching as the camera transmitted images back to the surface. The initial view was of a deep, dark blue, almost black. As the ROV went deeper, the light diminished, and the underwater world became increasingly mysterious. I could make out the sheer walls of the caldera, plunging down into the abyss. Strange formations of rock and sediment lined the lakebed, sculpted by centuries of underwater currents. "There, look!" exclaimed one of the team members, pointing to the screen. "Those are hydrothermal vents." I leaned closer, my eyes glued to the monitor. Sure enough, rising from the lake floor were small plumes of shimmering, heated water. These vents, Dr. Arist explained, were evidence of the volcanic activity that still existed beneath the lake. They were also potential hotspots for unique microbial life. "We need to get some samples from around those vents," Dr. Aris instructed. "Carefully maneuver the ROV closer." The ROV operator skillfully guided the vehicle towards the hydrothermal vents. As it approached, I could see small whitemats of bacteria clinging to the rocks around the vents. These were chemosynthetic organisms, Dr. Aris explained, which meant they obtained energy from chemicals in the water rather than from sunlight. They were living proof that life could thrive even in the most extreme environments. The ROV extended a robotic arm and began collecting samples of the water and the sediment around the vents. I watched, fascinated, as the samples were carefully sealed in sterile containers. "These samples," Dr. Aris said, "will be analyzed back in the lab, where they would hopefully reveal new insights into the lake's ecology and the evolution of life on Earth." Suddenly, the ROV's camera picked up something unexpected. Lying on the lake floor, partially buried in sediment, was a large, dark object. "What is that?" I asked, my voice filled with curiosity. Dr. Aris squinted at the monitor. "I'm not sure," she said. "Get closer. Let's get a better look." The ROV approached the object, and the image on the screen became clearer. It was a tree trunk, massive and petrified, lying on its side. The wood was dark and gnarled, its surface covered in a thin layer of sediment. "That's incredible!" I exclaimed. "How did a tree like that end up down there?" Dr. Aris leaned closer to the screen, her eyes narrowed in concentration. "That's no ordinary tree," she said. "Look at the size of it, and the degree of petrification. This is something very old, possibly predating the caldera formation itself." "Predating the caldera?" I repeated, my mind racing. "But that's impossible, isn't it? The eruption completely reshaped the landscape." "That's what we thought," Dr. Aris replied. "But this changes everything. It suggests that there was a significant forest here before Mount Mazama collapsed, a forest that was somehow preserved, at least in part, by the eruption. The implications of this discovery were staggering. It meant that the lake floor held clues to an ecosystem that existed before the cataclysm, a glimpse into a lost world. and it raised a whole new set of questions about the eruption itself. How did this trial survive? What other secrets were buried beneath the lake's surface? We spent the next few hours carefully documenting the petrified tree, taking photographs and collecting samples of the surrounding sediment. Dr. Aris was particularly interested in the sediment, hoping to find pollen or other organic material that could help us identify the species of tree and determine its age. As the ROV continued to explore the area around the tree, we made another surprising discovery. Scattered across the lake floor were several other petrified tree trunks, all of similar size and condition. It was clear that we had stumbled upon an ancient forest submerged beneath the waters of Crater Lake for thousands of years. The discovery of the petrified forest sent a wave of excitement through the research team. It was a major breakthrough, a tangible link to the past that could revolutionize our understanding of the region's history. But it also raised a number of concerns. The petrified trees were delicate and vulnerable, and we knew that we had to protect them from further damage. "We need to keep this quiet for now," Dr. Aris said, her voice serious. "If word gets out about the petrified forest, there's a risk that people will try to come down here and take pieces of it. We need to secure the site and conduct a thorough investigation before we release any information to the public." I nodded in agreement. "I understand," I said. "We'll keep it confidential." Over the next few days, the research team focused on mapping the extent of the petrified forest and collecting additional samples. We used sonar to create a detailed three-dimensional map of the lake floor, which revealed that the forest covered a surprisingly large area. We also collected core samples of the sediment, which contained a wealth of information about the lake's past. As we analyzed the samples, we began to piece together a picture of what the region was like before the eruption. The petrified trees were identified as a species of ancient pine, similar to those found in the Cascade Mountains today. The pollen samples revealed that the forest was home to a variety of other plants, including ferns, shrubs, and wildflowers. The sediment also contained evidence of past climate changes, including periods of drought and heavy rainfall. This information could help us understand how the region's ecosystem had evolved over time and how it might respond to future climate change. But the most intriguing discovery was a layer of ash that was found directly above the petrified forest. This ash layer was unlike anything we had seen before. It was much thicker and coarser than the ash from the Mount Mazama eruption, and it contained a different mix of minerals. "This is volcanic ash, all right," Dr. Aris said, examining the sample under a microscope. "But it's not from Mount Mazama. It's from a different volcano, one that erupted long before the caldera was formed." "A different volcano?" I asked, my eyebrows raised in surprise. "But there aren't any other volcanoes in this area, are there?" "Not anymore," Dr. Aris replied. "But there may have been in the past. This ash layer suggests that there was another volcanic eruption in this region, one that predates Mount Mazama by thousands of years, and that eruption may have played a role in shaping the landscape, creating the conditions that allowed the ancient forest to thrive." The discovery of the pre-Mazama ash layer opened up a whole new line of inquiry. It suggested that the history of Crater Lake was even more complex than we had previously imagined, that there were multiple volcanic events that had shaped the region over millions of years. As we delved deeper into the mysteries of Crater Lake, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and wonder. This was more than just a scientific investigation. It was an adventure into the unknown, a journey back in time to a lost world. And I knew that we were only just beginning to scratch the surface of the lake's secrets. The water truly remembered, and it was slowly, painstakingly giving up its ghosts. But the deeper we went, the more complicated the story became. It wasn't just one eruption, one cataclysmic event. It was a series of them, layered on top of each other like geological palimpsests. Each eruption had left its mark, a subtle shift in the mineral composition of the surrounding rock, a barely perceptible change in the magnetic field, and the lake, that vast silent reservoir, held them all. "Look at this core sample," Dr. Reynolds said, holding up a section of sediment. "Notice the distinct bands. Each one represents a different volcanic event. The darker bands are ash deposits, the lighter ones are periods of relative calm." I peered closer, trying to decipher the story etched in the earth. It was like reading an ancient manuscript written in the language of fire and ice. "And what about these anomalies?" I asked, pointing to a series of strange readings on a sonar scan. "What could be causing those?" Dr. Reynolds frowned. "That's what we're trying to figure out. It could be anything from underwater vents to unusual rock formations or something else entirely." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken possibilities. We were in uncharted territory, venturing into a world that few had ever seen. And the lake, with its impenetrable depths, seemed to be guarding its secrets jealously. One day, while exploring a remote section of the caldera rim, we stumbled upon something truly extraordinary. It was a series of petroglyphs carved into a massive basalt boulder. The images were unlike anything I had ever seen before. Strange, stylized figures that seemed to depict scenes of volcanic activity. "These could be thousands of years old," Dr. Ramirez said, his voice hushed with reverence. "They could be a record of the eruptions, passed down through generations of Native Americans." We spent hours documenting the petroglyphs, carefully photographing each one and trying to decipher their meaning. It was like finding a missing piece of the puzzle, a direct connection to the people who had witnessed the creation of Crater Lake. As we continued our research, we began to piece together a more complete picture of the lake's history. We learned about the Mazama culture, the people who had lived in the region for thousands of years before the eruption. They had revered the mountain, seeing it as a sacred place, a source of life and sustenance. But then came the cataclysm, the eruption that had shattered their world. The mountain had exploded with unimaginable force, burying their villages under tons of ash and rock. The survivors had been forced to flee, carrying with them the memories of the disaster. And yet, despite the devastation, they had never forgotten this mountain. They had continued to visit the lake, offering prayers and remembering their ancestors. They believed that the lake held the spirits of those who had perished in the eruption, that the water itself was a conduit to the past. "The Klamath tribes have a deep connection to Crater Lake," Dr. Aris said, her voice filled with respect. "They see it as a living entity, a place of both mourning and healing." She explained that the tribes had oral traditions that described the eruption in vivid detail. Stories passed down through generations, keeping the memory of the event alive. They believed that the lake is a sacred place, a place where the veil between the worlds is thin, she continued. They come here to connect with their ancestors, to seek guidance and healing. I thought back to the images we had captured, the petrified tree standing sentinel in the depths, the subtle variations in the water's chemistry. It was as if the lake was indeed a living memory, a repository of the past. As the days turned into weeks, our research continued. We explored every corner of the lake, mapping the underwater terrain, collecting water samples, and studying the unique ecosystem that had developed in this isolated environment. We discovered new species of algae and bacteria, organisms that had adapted to the extreme conditions of the lake. We also found evidence of hydrothermal vents, underwater springs that released heat and minerals into the water, further contributing to the lake's unique chemistry. One evening, as we were reviewing our data, David made an interesting observation. "Look at these temperature readings," he said, pointing to a graph on the screen. "There's a significant temperature anomaly near the center of the lake." Dr. Aris leaned closer, her brow furrowed in concentration. "That's odd," she said. "We haven't detected any hydrothermal vents in that area." We decided to investigate the anomaly further. The next day, we took the research vessel out to the center of the lake and lowered a submersible equipped with cameras and sensors. As the submersible descended into the depths, we watched the images on the monitor, our hearts pounding with anticipation. The water grew darker and colder as we went deeper, the sunlight fading away until we were enveloped in complete darkness. Suddenly, a strange glow appeared on the screen. It was faint at first, but it grew brighter as we approached the source. We steered the submersible towards the light, our eyes glued to the monitor. As we got closer, we could make out the shape of something in the distance. It was large and irregular, and it seemed to be emitting a soft, pulsating light. "What is that?" I exclaimed, my voice barely a whisper. Dr. Aris shook her head, her eyes wide with wonder. "I don't know," she said. "I have never seen anything like it." As we got even closer, we realized what we were looking at. It was a massive deposit of silica, formed by the precipitation of minerals from the lake water. But this was no ordinary silica deposit. It was glowing with an ethereal light, and it seemed to be pulsating with a life of its own. "It's like a giant geode," David said, his voice filled with awe. "But what's causing it to glow?" Dr. Aris speculated that it might be bioluminescence caused by microorganisms living within the silica structure. But there was something else, something more mysterious about the light. It seemed to resonate with the lake itself, as if the silica deposit was acting as a receiver, amplifying the memories and emotions that were stored within the water. We spent the next several days studying the silica deposit, collecting samples and analyzing its composition. We discovered that it contained trace amounts of rare earth elements, elements that are known to have luminescent properties. But the concentration of these elements was too low to explain the intensity of the glow. There had to be something else at play, something that we didn't yet understand. One evening, as we were sitting around the campfire, discussing our findings, Dr. Aris had an idea. What if the silica deposit is acting as a lens, focusing the energy of the lake? She said. What if it's amplifying the memories of the eruption, the trauma that's still stored within the water? It was a far-fetched idea, but it was the only explanation that seemed to fit the facts. we decided to test her theory. The next day, we took a special instrument out to the silica deposit, an instrument that could measure the subtle electromagnetic fields that emanated from the lake. As we got closer to the deposit, the instrument began to beep erratically. The electromagnetic field was spiking, fluctuating wildly. "Something's happening," I said, my voice trembling with excitement. "The field is getting stronger." Suddenly, the light from the silica deposit intensified, bathing the lake in an eerie glow. The water began to ripple, as if something was stirring beneath the surface. And then we heard it. A low, guttural roar that seemed to emanate from the depths of the lake. It was a sound that sent shivers down our spines, a sound that spoke of ancient power and unimaginable destruction. We looked at each other, our faces pale with fear. We knew that we had stumbled upon something truly extraordinary, something that could change our understanding of Crater Lake forever. But we also knew that we were playing with forces that were far beyond our control. The lake was awakening, and we had no idea what it would do next. We were about to delve deeper into the mysteries of Crater Lake, to confront the ghosts of the past and to unravel the secrets that lay hidden beneath its pristine surface. But as we ventured further into the unknown, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking a dangerous path, a path that could lead us to the very edge of sanity. The lake was calling to us, beckoning us to explore its depths, to uncover its secrets. And we, like moths to a flame, were drawn to its irresistible allure. The first sign was subtle, almost imperceptible. A shift in the water's color, a deepening of the blue, an unnatural stillness that settled over the surface. It was as if the lake was holding its breath, anticipating something momentous. Then came the whispers, carried on the wind, murmurs that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the caldera. They spoke of ancient spirits, of volcanic gods, of a time when the world was young and raw. "Did you hear that?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I frowned, tilting my head to listen. "Hear what?" "Just the wind, I think." "No, it was different, like voices, but underwater, coming from the lake." I dismissed it as fatigue, the altitude playing tricks on our minds. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They invaded our dreams, haunted our waking hours. We found ourselves drawn to the water's edge, staring into the abyss, searching for the source of the haunting melodies. One evening, as the sun dipped below the rim of the caldera, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, we stumbled upon something extraordinary. A small cave, hidden behind a curtain of cascading water, revealed itself to us. Inside, the walls were covered in ancient petroglyphs, depicting scenes of volcanic eruptions, tribal rituals, and strange, otherworldly beings. "This is incredible," David breathed, tracing the lines of a particularly intricate carving. "These symbols, they're older than anything we've ever seen around here." Dr. Aris carefully examined the petroglyphs, a flicker of excitement in her eyes. "The style is unlike anything I'm familiar with," she murmured. "It predates the known Klamath settlements in this area. This could rewrite the history of human presence at Crater Lake." The air in the cave was cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of minerals and something else. Something indefinable, almost ethereal. As I gazed at the ancient carvings, I felt a strange connection to the people who had created them, a sense of their lives, their beliefs, their fears. echoing through the centuries. "Look at this one," David said, pointing to a petroglyph that depicted a figure with elongated limbs and a disproportionately large head. "It looks like an alien," Dr. Aris chuckled softly. "Perhaps it's just a stylized representation of a shaman or a spirit being," she suggested. "Ancient cultures often depicted the supernatural in ways that seem strange to us today." But as I studied the figure more closely, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something more than just a symbolic representation. There was something undeniably alien about its features, something that hinted at a connection to forces beyond our understanding. We spent hours in the cave, documenting the petroglyphs, taking photographs, and trying to decipher their meaning. The more we learned, the more mysterious the lake became. It was as if the water itself was whispering secrets to us, revealing fragments of a forgotten past. As darkness began to fall, we reluctantly decided to leave the cave and return to our campsite. We knew that we had only scratched the surface of this place's mysteries, and that there was much more to discover. Back at the campsite, we huddled around a crackling fire, sharing our thoughts and impressions of the day's discoveries. The stars twinkled above us, reflecting in the still waters of the lake, creating an illusion of infinite depth. "I can't stop thinking about those petroglyphs," David said, his voice hushed. "They're so unsettling. What if they're not just stories or myths? What if they're records of actual events, of encounters with beings from another world?" Dr. Aris nodded slowly. "It's a possibility we can't ignore," she said. "Crater Lake has always been a place of mystery and power. It's not unreasonable to think that it might hold secrets that challenge our understanding of reality." As we sat in silence, contemplating the implications of our findings, a sudden gust of wind swept across the lake, causing the water to ripple and churn. The fire crackled and spat, sending sparks flying into the night sky. And then we heard it, a low, resonant hum emanating from the depths of the lake. The sound grew louder, vibrating through the ground, making our teeth chatter. We looked at each other in alarm, our hearts pounding in our chests. What was happening? Suddenly, a beam of light shot up from the center of the lake, piercing the darkness like a laser beam. The light was blindingly bright, casting long, eerie shadows across the caldera. We shielded our eyes, unable to look directly at it. As the light intensified, the humming grew louder, reaching a deafening crescendo. The air crackled with energy, and we could feel our hair standing on end. We were witnessing something extraordinary, something terrifying, something that defied explanation. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light vanished, the humming ceased, and the lake returned to its tranquil state. The only sound was the gentle lapping of the waves against the shore. We stared at each other in stunned silence, our minds reeling from what we had just witnessed. What had it been? A natural phenomenon? A hallucination? Or something else entirely? "Did you see that?" David whispered, his voice trembling. "Did that really happen?" Dr. Aris nodded slowly, her eyes wide with disbelief. I don't know what to think," she stammered. "I've never seen anything like that before." We knew in that moment that our research at Crater Lake had taken a dramatic turn. We had stumbled upon something far more profound, far more dangerous than we could have ever imagined. The lake was not just a beautiful natural wonder. It was a gateway to the unknown, a portal to a world beyond our comprehension. And we were about to venture into its depths. The next morning, we awoke to a strange stillness. The air was heavy, the sky overcast, and the lake was as smooth as glass. There was an eerie silence, as if the entire world was holding its breath. We decided to return to the cave, hoping to find some clue, some explanation for the events of the previous night. As we approached the entrance, we noticed something different. The curtain of cascading water that had hidden the cave was gone, replaced by a solid wall of rock. "That's impossible," David exclaimed. "The waterfall was there yesterday. How could it just disappear like that?" Dr. Aris examined the rock face closely. "It's not natural," she said. "The rock has been fused together, as if it's been subjected to intense heat." We tried to find another way into the cave, but there was none. The entrance was completely sealed off, as if the lake was trying to protect its secrets. Frustrated and bewildered, we returned to our campsite, determined to find another way to unravel the mystery of Crater Lake. We knew that we were dealing with forces beyond our control, but we were not ready to give up. The lake had called to us, had shown us glimpses of its hidden depths, and we were compelled to follow its lead, no matter where it might take us. As we packed up our gear, preparing to move to a new location on the lake, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced around, scanning the shoreline, but there was no one there. Just the trees, the rocks, and the water, all silently observing us. We loaded our equipment into the inflatable boat and set off across the lake, heading towards a remote cove on the far side of the caldera. The water was calm and still, reflecting the grey sky like a mirror. As we motored along, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, a premonition of something terrible to come. The sun remained hidden behind the clouds, casting a pall over the landscape. The air grew colder and a thick fog began to roll in, obscuring the shoreline. We were enveloped in a grey, swirling mist, unable to see more than a few feet in front of us. "This is getting creepy," David said, his voice strained. "I don't like this fog." Dr. Aris consulted her GPS device. "We're almost there," she said. "Just a little further." As we continued through the fog, we began to hear a strange sound, a high-pitched whine like the sound of insects buzzing. The sound grew louder, more insistent, until it filled the air around us. Suddenly, the fog parted, revealing a sight that made our blood run cold. Directly in front of us, rising from the depths of the lake, was a massive metallic object. It was shaped like a disc, with a series of glowing lights around its perimeter. It was hovering just above the water, casting an eerie green glow over the surrounding area. "What is that?" David stammered, his eyes wide with terror. Dr. Aris was speechless, her face pale with shock. She could only stare at the object in disbelief, her mind struggling to comprehend what she was seeing. The object began to descend slowly, gently touching the surface of the water. A beam of light shot out from the bottom of the disc, illuminating the lake below. And then a voice boomed out, echoing across the water, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You have been chosen," the voice said. "You are the key to unlocking the secrets of this place." We looked at each other in terror, our hearts pounding in our chests. We knew in that moment that our lives would never be the same again. We had been drawn into something far bigger than ourselves, something that would change the course of history. The voice continued, its tone becoming more urgent. The time is near. The awakening is at hand. You must prepare yourselves. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the object vanished, disappearing back into the depths of the lake, leaving us alone in the fog, with the echo of its words ringing in our ears. We were left with the chilling certainty that Crater Lake was holding secrets far deeper and more profound than we could have ever imagined. The message, the strange craft, the unnerving sense of anticipation, it all pointed to something momentous on the horizon. We exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. What did it mean? The time is near. What awakening were they referring to? And what role, if any, were we meant to play in it all? Dr. Harris, ever the scientist, was the first to break the silence. "We need to analyze the recording," she stated, her voice regaining its usual professional composure. "Enhance the audio, study the visual data, see if we can glean any more information about the object, its construction, its energy signature." She turned to me and Ben. "Ben, you're the expert on anomalous phenomena. What's your take on all this?" Ben ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. "Honestly, I'm stumped," he admitted. "I've seen my share of strange things, but that was something else entirely. The technology, the message, it's unlike anything I've ever encountered. It's as if it's not even from this planet." He paused, his brow furrowed in thought. "The Klamath legends. Could there be some truth to them? Could the lake truly be a conduit to something other?" I nodded slowly. "The petroglyphs, the stories of the ancestors, they all seem to be connected somehow. It's as if the lake is a living record, holding memories and secrets that are just now starting to surface." I thought back to Dr. Chen's words about the water remembering the catastrophe. Was it possible that the lake was not just a passive observer, but an active participant in some grand cosmic drama? Dr. R shook her head, a skeptical expression on her face. "Let's not get carried away with speculation," she cautioned. "We need to focus on the facts, on the data. We have a recording. We have visual evidence. Let's analyze it thoroughly before we jump to any conclusions." We returned to the research station, the atmosphere thick with tension and anticipation. Dr. Aris immediately set to work on the recording, using her sophisticated software to enhance the audio and sharpen the images. Ben and I pored over the Klamath legends, searching for any clues that might shed light on the meaning of the message. We spent hours poring over ancient texts, cross-referencing them with geological surveys, historical accounts, anything that might provide a piece of the puzzle. As the night wore on, we began to uncover some intriguing connections. The legend spoke of a time before the eruption, when the area around Crater Lake was a lush, fertile valley, inhabited by a powerful tribe of people. These people, known as the Ancient Ones, possessed advanced knowledge and technology, far beyond anything we could imagine. They were said to be able to communicate with the spirits of nature, to control the elements, to even travel between worlds. According to the legends, the eruption was not a natural disaster, but a deliberate act, triggered by a conflict between the Ancient Ones and a malevolent force that sought to control their power. The eruption was meant to destroy the Ancient Ones and their knowledge, but some of them managed to escape, hiding their secrets within the lake, waiting for the time when they could return. The more we learned, the more convinced we became that the object we had seen was connected to these ancient ones. The message, the technology, the sense of impending awakening. It all seemed to fit into the narrative of the legends. But if the ancient ones were returning, what did that mean for us? What was their purpose, their agenda? And what role would we play in their plans? Meanwhile, Dr. Aris had made a significant breakthrough in her analysis of the recording. She had managed to isolate a faint energy signature emanating from the object, a signature that was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It was a complex, multidimensional energy field, resonating at a frequency that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "This is incredible," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. "This energy signature, it's as if it's not even from this universe. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." She paused, her brow furrowed in thought. "But there's something else, something familiar about it. It's faint, almost imperceptible, but I think I've detected a trace of volcanic energy." Volcanic energy? That didn't make sense. The ancient ones were supposed to be advanced beings, not primitive volcano worshippers. Unless the eruption itself was part of their plan. Unless they had harnessed the power of the volcano to achieve their own ends. The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. The lake wasn't just a repository of memories, it was a power source. The water, infused with the energy of the eruption, was a conduit to something far greater, something that could change the world as we knew it. And we were standing right in the middle of it all. We had stumbled upon a secret that had been hidden for millennia, a secret that was about to be unleashed upon the world. And we had no idea what the consequences would be. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on our shoulders. We knew that we couldn't keep this to ourselves. We had to warn the world, but who would believe us? How could we convince them that Crater Lake was more than just a beautiful tourist destination? That it was a gateway to something extraordinary and potentially dangerous? We were caught in a race against time, a desperate struggle to understand the truth before it was too late. And as the sun began to rise over the rim of the caldera, casting its golden light upon the still waters of the lake, we knew that our lives would never be the same. "We need to get this data analyzed," I said, breaking the silence. "Every reading, every anomaly. There has to be a logical explanation, something we're missing." Sarah nodded, her eyes still fixed on the lake. "I agree. But even if we find a scientific explanation, it doesn't change what we saw. The visions, the emotions. It was all so real. Real enough to scare the hell out of me," Mark muttered, rubbing his temples. "I keep seeing that eruption, feeling the heat." "Okay, let's focus," I said, trying to regain control of the situation. "Mark, you're the geology expert. What kind of volcanic activity could cause these energy fluctuations?" Mark hesitated. "I don't know. Crater Lake is considered dormant. There shouldn't be any significant activity. But if there were pockets of magma deep beneath the surface, interacting with the water table, maybe that could generate some sort of electromagnetic field? And that field could somehow trigger these visions?" Sarah asked, skepticism evident in her voice. "It's a long shot, I know," Mark admitted, "but we have to consider every possibility." "Right," I said. "Sarah, you're the historian. Anything in the local legends, the Klamath tribe's stories, that could shed some light on this?" Sarah frowned. The Klamath have always revered Crater Lake, or Giwas as they call it. They believe it's a sacred place, the site of a great battle between Lao, the spirit of the underworld, and Skell, the sky god. Liao was defeated and his body was destroyed, creating the caldera. They say the lake is still haunted by Liao's spirit, that it's a place of immense power and should be treated with respect. She paused, thinking. There are also stories of beings who live beneath the surface, guardians of the lake, protectors of its secrets. Guardians? Ben asked, raising an eyebrow. Like mythical creatures? Well, the Klamath stories are full of symbolism and metaphor, Sarah replied. But who's to say there isn't some truth to them? Perhaps these guardians are simply a way of describing something we don't yet understand. Dr. Aris nodded thoughtfully. It's important to consider all perspectives, both scientific and cultural. The Klamath have lived here for thousands of years. They've observed this lake for generations. Their knowledge is invaluable. So what do we do? I asked. We've got a strange object on the lake floor, petroglyphs that don't match any known style, and legends of underwater guardians. Where do we even begin? We start by gathering more data, Dr. Aris said firmly. We need to map the entire lake floor, document the petroglyphs in detail, and analyze the composition of the strange object. We also need to delve deeper into the Klamath legends, talk to tribal elders, and see if they can offer any insights. I can help with that, Sarah offered. I've been working with the Klamath tribes for years, building relationships and earning their trust. I can reach out to some of the elders and see if they're willing to share their knowledge. Excellent, Dr. Aris said. Ben, I want you to focus on the sonar data. See if you can get a clearer image of the object on the lake floor and look for any other anomalies. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Got it, Ben replied. I'll get to work on it right away. And I'll continue to monitor the water chemistry and seismic activity, Dr. Aris added. We need to be vigilant to watch for any changes that could indicate something is about to happen. Right, I said. So we're basically diving headfirst into the unknown. Dr. Aris smiled. That's the nature of exploration, isn't it? We follow the evidence wherever it leads us. And right now, the evidence is pointing towards something extraordinary. Over the next few days, we worked tirelessly, each of us pursuing our assigned tasks. Sarah spent hours on the phone, talking to Klamath elders, listening to their stories, and trying to glean any information that could help us understand the mysteries of Crater Lake. Ben pored over the sonar data, enhancing the images and searching for any unusual patterns. Dr. Aris continued to monitor the lake's vital signs, looking for any signs of instability. Meanwhile, I focused on the petroglyphs. I spent hours photographing them, sketching them, and trying to decipher their meaning. The more I studied them, the more I realized that they were far more complex than I had initially thought. They weren't just simple drawings. They were intricate symbols, arranged in a specific order as if they were telling a story. One evening, as I was working late in the lab, I noticed something peculiar about the petroglyphs. Some of the symbols seemed to repeat, but in slightly different forms. It was as if the artist was trying to emphasize certain elements, to draw attention to them. I decided to create a digital database of the petroglyphs, cataloging each symbol and its variations. As I entered the data, I began to see a pattern emerge. The symbols seemed to be arranged in a circular pattern, like a spiral. And at the center of the spiral, there was a single dominant symbol, a stylized eye. The eye symbol was unlike any of the other petroglyphs. It was larger, more detailed, and more prominently displayed. It seemed to be the focal point of the entire composition, the key to unlocking its meaning. I stared at the eye symbol for a long time, trying to understand what it represented. Was it the eye of Lao, the spirit of the underworld? Was it something else entirely? Suddenly, I remember something Sarah had told me about the Klamath legends. She had mentioned that the Klamath believed that Crater Lake was a place of immense power, a gateway to another world, and that the lake was guarded by beings who lived beneath the surface, protectors of its secrets. Could the eye symbol be a representation of these guardians? Could it be a warning, a message to those who dared to trespass on their territory? As I pondered these questions, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were getting closer to something big, something potentially dangerous. We were delving into mysteries that were perhaps best left undisturbed. The next morning, I shared my findings with Dr. Aris and the others. I showed them the digital database of the petroglyphs, the circular pattern, and the dominant eye symbol. Dr. Aris was intrigued. "This is fascinating," she said. "The circular pattern suggests a cyclical process, a recurring event. And the eye symbol, it could represent awareness, vigilance, or even a portal." "A portal?" Ben asked skeptically. "You think these petroglyphs are pointing to some kind of interdimensional gateway?" "I'm not saying that's definitely what it is," Dr. Aris replied. "But we can't rule out any possibilities. We need to keep an open mind and follow the evidence wherever it leads us." Sarah nodded in agreement. The Klamath legends speak of beings who can travel between worlds, who can manipulate the fabric of reality. Perhaps these petroglyphs are a map, a guide to navigating these hidden pathways. "So what do we do?" I asked. "Do we try to decipher the meaning of the petroglyphs? Do we try to find this portal?" Dr. Aris paused, considering her options. "I think we need to proceed with caution," she said. "We don't know what we're dealing with here. We could be opening a door that we can't close." "But if we don't try," I argued, "we may never understand the mysteries of Crater Lake. We may never know what secrets lie hidden beneath its surface." Dr. Aris sighed. "I know," she said, "but we need to weigh the risks against the potential rewards. We need to be sure that we're not putting ourselves or anyone else in danger." Just then, Ben interrupted us. "Guys, you need to see this," he said urgently. "I've been analyzing the sonar data, and I've found something unusual." We rushed over to Ben's workstation, where he was displaying a series of sonar images on the screen. The images showed the geological lake floor with its jagged rocks and underwater canyons. But in one particular area, there was something that didn't belong. It was a large circular structure hidden beneath a layer of sediment. The structure was perfectly symmetrical with a smooth, polished surface. It looked like a giant disc embedded in the lake floor. "What is that?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with awe. "I don't know," Ben replied, "but it's definitely not natural. It looks like some kind of artificial construct." Dr. Aris stared at the sonar images, her eyes wide with disbelief. "That's incredible," she said. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Could it be the object we detected earlier? I asked. The one with the strange energy signature. It's possible, Ben said, but this structure is much larger, much more complex. It's like a whole city down there. A city? Sarah exclaimed. You think there's an underwater city at the bottom of Crater Lake? I don't know what to think, Ben replied. But something built that structure, and it wasn't human. Dr. Aris turned to me, her expression grave. Remember the petroglyphs, she said. The circular pattern, the eye symbol. It's all connected. This structure, this underwater city, it's what the petroglyphs were pointing to. So what do we do? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. Do we explore this city? Do we try to uncover its secrets? Dr. Aris hesitated for a moment, then made her decision. We go down there, she said, her voice firm. We have to know what's down there. We have to understand the truth about Crater Lake, about its history, about its future. The decision was made. We spent the next few days preparing for our descent. We gathered the necessary equipment, advanced diving gear, underwater lights, sonar devices, and cameras to document everything we found. We meticulously planned our route, taking into account the depth, the currents, and the potential hazards that awaited us in the dark abyss below. As we geared up, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had been growing within me. The lake seemed to be watching us, its surface as still and silent as a mirror. I wondered if we were making a mistake, if we were trespassing on sacred ground, disturbing something that was meant to remain hidden. But the lure of the unknown was too strong to resist. We were driven by a thirst for knowledge, a desire to unravel the mysteries that lay beneath the surface. We were explorers, scientists, and we were determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Finally, the day arrived. We boarded the submersible, a state-of-the-art vessel designed to withstand the immense pressure of the deep. As we sealed the hatch and began our descent, the world outside faded away, replaced by the eerie blue glow of the lake's depths. Down, down we went, the sunlight gradually disappearing until we were enveloped in complete darkness. The only light came from our submersible's powerful beams, cutting through the inky blackness. As we descended, the temperature dropped, and the pressure increased, pressing in on us from all sides. Here we passed through layers of sediment and debris, remnants of the cataclysmic eruption that had formed the lake. We saw strange, bioluminescent creatures adapted to life in the perpetual darkness. We felt the weight of the water above us, a constant reminder of the immense power of nature. After what seemed like an eternity, we finally reached the bottom. The submersible's lights illuminated a scene that took our breath away. Before us lay the ruins of a city, a sprawling metropolis of towering structures and intricate designs. It was a sight that defied explanation, a testament to a civilization that had existed long before our own. The buildings were constructed from a dark volcanic rock, adorned with strange symbols and patterns. Some were intact, their walls still standing tall, while others were crumbling, eroded by the passage of time. We could see plazas, temples, and residential areas, all connected by a network of streets and passageways. As we navigated through the ruins, we couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and wonder. Who were these people? What was their story? How did they build this incredible city in the depths of Crater Lake? We soon began to find artifacts, objects that offered clues about the city's inhabitants. We found tools, weapons, and pottery, all made from materials that were not native to the area. We found carvings of strange creatures, beings that resembled neither humans nor animals. And then we found the chamber. It was located in the heart of the city, a massive structure that appeared to be a temple or a sanctuary. Inside, we found a large circular chamber, its walls covered in petroglyphs. As we examined the petroglyphs, we realized that they were the same symbols that we had seen on the shore of Wizard Island. The circular pattern, the eye symbol, they were all there, telling a story that we were only beginning to understand. In the center of the chamber, we found a pedestal, and on the pedestal we found an object. It was a crystal, a large multifaceted gem that pulsed with an inner light. As we approached it, we felt a surge of energy, a wave of power that washed over us. Suddenly, images flooded our minds, visions of the past, of the city's inhabitants, of their lives, their culture, their beliefs. We saw them building the city, harnessing the energy of the volcano, communicating with beings from other worlds. We saw the catastrophe that destroyed their civilization, the eruption that tore apart the mountain and plunged their city into the depths of the lake. We saw their struggle for survival, their attempts to escape, their ultimate demise. And then we saw the future. We saw a vision of our own world, of the challenges we face, of the dangers that lie ahead. We saw the potential for destruction, but also the potential for hope. The crystal was a repository of knowledge, a time capsule that contained the wisdom of an ancient civilization. It was a warning, a message from the past that could help us shape our future. As the visions faded, we realized that we had stumbled upon something truly extraordinary. We had discovered a lost civilization, a forgotten chapter in human history. We had learned the truth about Crater Lake, about its past, about its future. We knew that we had to share our discovery with the world. We had to tell the story of the city beneath the lake, of its inhabitants, of their message. We had to warn humanity about the dangers that lie ahead, but also inspire them with the hope for a better future. We gathered the crystal and as much data as we could, and we began our ascent back to the surface. As we rose through the water, I looked back at the city below, its lights twinkling in the darkness. I knew that we would never forget what we had seen, what we had learned. We had been changed by our experience, transformed by the knowledge that we had gained. We were no longer just explorers, scientists. We were now guardians of a secret, messengers of a forgotten civilization. As we emerged from the lake, the sun was rising, casting a golden glow over the landscape. Crater Lake was as beautiful as ever, its surface as still and serene as a mirror. But now we knew the truth about the water that remembers the catastrophe. It remembers the fire, the destruction, but also the resilience, the rebirth. It remembers the civilization that thrived beneath its surface and the message they left for us. We had come to Crater Lake seeking answers. We had found them and so much more. We had found a connection to the past, a glimpse into the future, and a renewed sense of hope for humanity. The journey was far from over. It was just beginning. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. Comment what you want to hear next. But there was one more question that lingered in the air. What was the meaning of the symbols we had found? Dr. Aris Thorne, a renowned linguist, joined our team. He spent weeks studying the intricate patterns, comparing them to ancient languages and lost civilizations. Finally, he emerged from his makeshift office, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. "I think I've cracked it," he announced, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "These symbols, they're not just writing. They're a form of energy manipulation, a way to communicate with the very fabric of reality." He explained that the ancient civilization had mastered the art of harnessing the power of water, using it as a conduit for their thoughts and emotions. The symbols were keys, unlocking the potential within the water itself. We looked at each other, stunned. Could it be possible? Could this water truly remember not just the physical events of the past, but also the thoughts and feelings of those who